talk about your book and, you signed a copy for me and, the title of it is Dare to be Different. And it really encapsulates a lot of your personal story and a lot of your professional experience. But I'd like you to share with us the mindset and the psychology around how being different or daring to be different, if you will, is a secret sauce, an ingredient, a way to distinguish you or anybody in what they're up to in life.
Well, that's a big question. I will try and do this as succinctly as I possibly
Well, we
can.
have, Sandro, we have 3 or 4 days. So just, grab a cup of coffee and let's start.
Perfect. We'll do it in chapters then, Seth.
Very good.
I suppose probably the best way to answer that question, Seth, is to take you back to my childhood. I lost my father to cancer when I was very young. I was the eldest of 4 children. My mum was a widow at the age of 29. And we were kind of the riches to rags story because my father was a very successful entrepreneur and we lived in this big house and everything was perfect in our life. And then within a couple of years of my father passing away, my mother had lost everything. And the primary reason for that was because there was no plan in place and she didn't have any business acumen. And, think things happen like that. So not in itself a particularly tragic story, but a great life lesson for me as a young man growing up. And I stepped into what was left of the family business to help my auntie who had taken over from my father. And I learned one very important lesson, which was hard work makes up for a lack of talent. But when I was 21 and I'd finished university, I needed a job, as so many people do, and started working in financial services for no other reason than it was really the only job going at the time. I can honestly say I did not wake up when I was 14 and think, goodness, I couldn't think of anything more I'd rather do than be a financial advisor. So there I was, plying a trade, not really knowing what I was doing. But one thing, and this is to your question, one thing that was really burning away at me was I was being told how to do something. I was being trained from a manual that had been around for 100 years. Everyone had done it the same way. And it just didn't feel very effective. And this is kind of like an analogy for life as well, because I was going through this process time after time after time. And the ROI, my return on investment for the blood, sweat, the tears, it was pretty poor. And so what I did, and I can't explain why, but I guess maybe because of the experience that I'd gone through with my family, I started to look at really every single aspect of the process. And process is a word I use a lot when I speak, and positioning is another one. But this whole unique selling proposition doesn't necessarily come from, coming up with an ingenious idea that no one's ever thought of. Sometimes it just comes from challenging the status quo of looking at something and thinking, is this really effective? Do I just follow, what everyone else has done to get the same result? Or do I just push back a little bit and ask myself the question, not necessarily radically change something. There are not many new ideas in life anymore, but how can I just improve this process, maybe by 10%, and do it in such a way that I just achieve a better result more quickly? And that in itself, Seth, is kind of like the USP. So a couple of great examples. People don't necessarily go to McDonald's for a great meal, and they don't go to Starbucks for a great cup of coffee necessarily. But there is a reason why those companies are super successful. And, we could talk about this all day, but one of the things that they really trade off is this idea of consistency. So one of the things that I've done in my business to build trust, build great relationships, and establish a really robust mindset is to build a consistent process. And in my profession, the fact that I speak now almost as much as, my day job activity, but that whole process engenders trust because people come to rely on it. And I think that was the big differentiator for me. So in my book, all I do is I talk about the ways I push back against the conformists, the ones that are happy being comfortable in life. And, this is something, again, that I speak of. I talk about the Discouragement Club, as you know, and that's the group of people that we come across in life and business. And really, it's their sole responsibility to stop other people progressing because they feel comfortable where they are in life, a little ambitionless. But when they see other people being pulled back from achieving great outcomes, they're kind of happy. So really the thing about the Discouragement Club is that we've got this group of people in life whose focus, their main primary purpose in life is to stop the likes of you and I achieving the things that we are capable of achieving, because they just feel comfortable where they are. And, we know that success is uncomfortable. It's a fact. And there's no shortcut to success. You have to go through that process of discomfort, but that's also a process of discovery. So for me, that little voice on my shoulder that we've all had it since we were about 7 or 8 years old. Prior to that, there was no filter. There was no little voice that said at the end of a calendar year, when you'd set all these really amazing goals, because you'd kind of opened up the emotional part, the right side of your brain on the 1st of January, and you created all these incredible goals. And then at the end of the year, when you don't achieve the goals for various reasons, the little voice has this kind of habit of saying, well, don't worry, Seth, there's always next year. And then you just kick the can down the road until, unfortunately, at some point in the future, you look back over your shoulder and you ask yourself this all-important question. And the question is, if only I had ... And then the big question for all of us is, what will our ... be? And because of my experience at a young age, I really got to that conclusion at a relatively young age. I was in my early 20s. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just not prepared to accept what people would have me believe life should be. And so I just looked at every single aspect of my life and the business, and I just tore it all apart and rebuilt it by just trying to improve every component part. And that really forms the basis of the success of my business in the UK. And I know success is different things to different people, but that really is one of the key messages that I take to what is now 90 countries in the world, sharing ways, because Seth, the reality is that we have all achieved extraordinary success by following that process. What happened was we just got a bit distracted. Things, the Discouragement Club, the little voice on the shoulder, but we are all fundamentally brilliant human beings. But we just got to get back to following that same process that we adopted all those years ago, which was born of two things. One was someone showed us how to do something, typically our parents, and then by repetition, we would perfect until we got to the right outcome. And I wouldn't say it's as simple as that, but those are the two fundamental principles for achieving, frankly, anything you want to achieve in life.